Hey everybody, Jason Franklin here. Welcome back to Expedition U. We are here today with my good friend, mentor, and just general good guy, Jimmy Franklin. Jimmy, how you doing?
Hi, buddy. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm watching what's going on around us, and there's obviously a certain amount of nerves surrounding the real estate market right now. But I think generally, as with any market, the people that have the good business principles that are doing what they need to be doing will come out just fine. But if you just look at the numbers, whew.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were way up there. There was a long way to fall before it really, I mean, it was going to look worse than it really was because those numbers were so crazy before. As got to keep thinking about it as well.
Absolutely. So, Jimmy, you've been doing some videos lately. For those people that don't know, so Jimmy, you started the Franklin team, and your family has since taken over that business with Andrew and Sarah. And if I say anything out of turn, let me know. And I know you've been posting some videos recently about 40 years in real estate. So first of all, congratulations, because that is no small task.
I almost made it. On Saturday. That'll be the day the license was sent to me in the mail.
Ah, very nice.
That's how they did it in those days. They would you took the test, and then if you failed it, they let you know pretty quick, like in 3 days or 4 days or something. And if you passed it, they didn't tell you passed it. You just, well, I didn't get the fail slip. So after about a week, I go, I think I may have passed.
Woo-hoo.
Which going back to my college days was actually quite a victory for me because I wasn't a very good student.
One of the things that you said in your first video that really struck a chord with me, because I've been in real estate for going on 9 years now, and I mean, I was very fortunate to have come into this one in an amazing time to be in real estate. I mean, I started 2014. Everything started ramping back up pretty heavy around 2012. But I also brought with me 30 years of sales experience. I just decided to sell something with more zeros. But one of the things that you said that I thought was really interesting to me was, at the end of my first decade in real estate, I didn't really have a whole lot more to show for it than what I did when I started. But by the end of my second decade, I could have retired if I had felt the inclination to do so. Mm-hmm. Can you speak on that and kind of what that means? Because I mean, obviously that's a matter of, I guess I'm assuming you're talking about the relationships that you built, the business that you built, sphere of influence.
Yeah, I did. The 80s were, for everybody, most people that are watching this are much younger. They weren't there in the 80s, or if they were kids. They didn't really pay attention. They were pretty bad, man. I think half the homes in Houston were foreclosed on. I mean, wow. I got that. Yeah, it was unbelievable. You could go down, you could go to an Astro game from Katy and get there in 30 minutes, go right by the Galleria, and there was no traffic at 5 o'clock. It was great. That part was great. But, there wasn't a lot of business to be had relative to, the people that were, in the business. There was a lot of, it was just a really bad time in Houston. The financial crisis that you lived through was nothing in compared to that in Houston anyway. So, but what I did do is I did all the fundamentals really well. I listened to other people who were smarter than me. I paid attention to them. I was not afraid to call and ask for pointers. And I built relationships, and I stayed with those relationships. And I was good at retention. And so even though I didn't have, any money by the end of my first decade to speak of, I think I mentioned in the video, I think when I hit my 8th year in real estate, I took the time to do it. I remember where I was when it happened, and I was like, all right, I have the exact same amount of assets as I have liability, debts. It's like, I'm 35 and I got nothing. And so, but what I didn't really, I couldn't, sorry about that. What I couldn't see at that point that I saw, in looking back and historically, is that I had built so many good relationships that everything was going to come to fruition.
Sure.
And kind of like the very end of that first decade, and then into my second decade, it all hit, and those relationships hit. I got some breaks. I met some really smart, or I met some people in the builder world, which turned out to be my niche. But that really wouldn't have worked had I not had good relationship practices.
Sure.
So those people trusted me before they had business to give me.
So next question is, with the market shifting, right? I mean, and that's like, I don't know if I have to say the word market shift again, I think I'm going to throw up, but it's happening. It's very obvious. I was running numbers this morning just because I guess I was in too good of a mood. So I figured I'd look at numbers.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And, just in the Clear Lake area, I mean, which is obviously just a small segment, but I think it's indicative. There's 75 homes sold in the last 30 days. And on the same 30 days last year, it was 115. And of the 154 properties that are on market in this small pocket area, 78 of them have taken price reductions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it's over 50%. I mean, so it's very obvious that the last few years of get a listing, throw it on the market, and take your money is shifting. And I know it's obvious right now that the business principles of new agents or even seasoned agents is more important right now than it has been in the last decade. So, I mean, what advice would you give a new agent, or maybe one that's not necessarily new, but is seeing a strategic decline in their business?
Well, so I'm a serial optimist anyway, and I like to, I remember being at a Houston Business Journal's Top 25 Awards banquet, basically the year after the financial crisis. It was probably like 2010 actually, but it was coming after the 2009 year, and they asked everyone, hey, how do you do this? And I sort of said, I just had a much more positive, like we just kept grinding and kept working and kept all the fundamentals that that built our business in the first place. As far as those numbers being, depressing, I would probably, if I just wanted to make myself feel a little bit more normal, I'd probably look and see what they were in 2019, because I really think 20 and 21 should almost be,
that doesn't count.
stricken from your memory, and assume that you're not going to win 14 straight hands on a blackjack table. And if you ever do, don't ever set that as your standard for anything that happens again. Like, man, and remember that day back in Vegas where I won 14 straight hands on a blackjack table. 20 and 21 were just circumstances came together to cause something that probably, not even close to I've ever seen in my 40 years. So I'd kind of look back and say, hey, was that number that you just quoted me, was that, I don't know that it was or wasn't, because you know that market completely. Mm-hmm. And I don't, but I would guess that number might not be, so far off of what, if you looked at 2019.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, and especially, you've got these agents who come in, in the last 12, 24, 36 months. And I think that is something that they should understand, is that, if you have done really well in the last 2 years, you probably still need to step up your fundamentals next year. Because I mean, what got you that, if you want to maintain where you are, it's probably going to take a little bit more work. You're going to need more relationships and more fundamentals. I mean, wouldn't you agree on that?
Yeah, and you got me thinking about something because and it was obvious because you asked me to reflect back onto the '80s where I started, and then I feel kind of bad for somebody who started in 20 and 21 because they probably, and you can't really blame them, but they probably think that's just the way it is,
Yeah.
because that's what they know. And then they find out this. Whereas I came from this horrible place. and so as a result, anything else I ever see will never compare to that.
We know it's fun. Go ahead.
Oh no. And so anyway, yeah, and it's probably going to be much more difficult for someone who came in not that long ago and hit the ground running.
Well, it's kind of like if you just started watching the Astros in the last 5 years, right? You didn't go through the Astros of the 80s and 90s.
Well, that's a great example. I grew up. My dad took me to some games in Colts Stadium to show you how old I am. And so there was basically no World Series championships from 1962, the beginning, until 2017. So I had all those years. And so now, if you became an Astro fan and right then, just because you just were coming in and learning about baseball, you go, wow, that's just how it is. So anything that happens after this run is over, and it will end.
Sure.
It's going to end, Nobody typically goes on forever except Tom Brady. And
well, there's that.
And then they eventually somebody will go and say, this is awful. And it's like, yeah, this was my life for 45 years.
So that being said, I know that you and your team made a really big move. 4 years ago now?
Yeah.
So have 4 years ago,
four-year party coming up on Thursday after being at Remax for 32 years. We made a move in 18. Yeah.
So, I mean, one, with a team that was successful as y'all were, and you're doing really well. I mean, obviously, always happy, never satisfied. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep working. You have to kind of keep growing. What was the number one reason that you guys made that move?
Well, I'm glad you said the number one reason, because the company now has so many reasons now that we know more about it that I can speak to, and so many of the people that have followed us have said what their number one reason is. So, but you're right, everybody has a number one reason, and ours was that the additional ancillary financial benefits that the company offered that don't exist anywhere else were available. And one thing that that people don't realize now, because every real estate brokerage that gets a brand only got that brand because really good agents came to that company. So when I left to go Century 21, which was the biggest brand in the world at the time, and left to go to Remax in '86. Remax was nobody, especially here. They probably had some better market share in other places. They were kind of going into it slowly, but in Houston, not so much. And in Katy, not at all. It was a brand new franchise. And so, and I had already sort of figured out, I felt like 3 years into it, and it wasn't like I was a huge producer, but I was big enough to where I was leaving a bunch of money on the table. And I left for one reason, and I had a young family, and my children were 2 and 4, and I left because there was a pretty big gap between what I was paying the broker at one place and what I could be paying them at Remax with this different kind of concept.
Sure.
Just pay your rent and you're on your own kind of concept. And business didn't slow down, it didn't slow down. And so it was fairly easy this many years later, when a much younger company than it is now, much smaller, much less known than EXP is now. But in 18, I think there was 11,000 agents when we left. And I knew that nothing was going to change. Business was going to be great. So I looked at it as risk reward, right?
Sure.
There wasn't zero risk. Business was going to be just as good, and it would be for anyone else that left, that leaves their company. And for some reason, brokerages are very good at convincing agent that they're going to be lost without them. Or at least they try to anyway. They hammer that home. Man, without us, you're nobody.
Well,
and so go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think you made a really incredibly important statement there that I don't want it to get glossed over, and that is RE/MAX didn't grow RE/MAX. I mean, and I'm not, Coldwell didn't grow Coldwell. It's the agents that do that. Mm-hmm. It's just at this point, EXP has a platform where the agents are rewarded for what they were already doing.
Yeah, in a way, I don't know if anybody was thinking this, but in a way, I think EXP kind of figured it out with their awards and their stock awards and rewarding agents like yourself who do really big numbers that you get your cap money back. Whereas other companies, that you were at, you were the one that paid the light bill, right? Yeah. The bigger producers paid the light bill, and at EXP, they don't do it that way. They basically say, no, you're making agents want to come over to this company, so they reward you instead of taxing you, essentially. And so that's why we left to go there, but I think the first part of it is very important, which was because anytime you have an investment or a business decision, you have to, analyze the risk versus the reward, right? Like, okay, I'm going to invest in this oil well. It could go dry and my entire $100,000 is gone. But if it hits, I can get 20 times that amount of money, or I can put my money in the bank and I can get 1.5% return interest, but I have no chance of losing it. And EXP was the best example I've ever seen of there was no risk, right? Mm-hmm. As I already stated, business as a realtor, as a team, was going to continue. And in fact, we've quadrupled in those 4 years, So not only
to that statement, Jimmy, it's funny because you guys came in at a time when there was only 11,000 agents in the entire company, and it was only a sprinkling of agents in Houston. And when you talked about the fact that there was really no risk for y'all, and this isn't meant to be, just overdone flattery, but now that teams like yourself are at EXP, there's even less risk. Because of the relationships and the ability to call on people and the ability to have sources.
Yeah, exactly. And, think about it. Well, okay, the risk would be that you'd get there and somehow this company, it didn't make it, for example, right? Sure. And then you'd have an annoying 12 days of picking somebody. Everybody would want you, hey, come here, out of business. That was it anyway. So we knew that we could go independent, or somebody would cut us a big check to go there or something like that if it did go well. But if that was your concern, like, wow, I don't want to make a move and then have to do it again, that doesn't look good. That's long gone. We're one of the few companies that makes money these days, right? We already know who doesn't make money, and they're bleeding it. We make a lot of money. We have a lot of money, and we're extremely profitable. So you're right. Those days are over. Plus, if you do believe that name recognition or brand recognition means something, and you don't completely buy into the fact that it's you that made it happen, well, good news. EXP has extremely good market share. You're in a market where you're the section of town you're in, we dominate. So not only is it not unknown, but let me tell you something. It didn't do it. It did it because people like you and Monica and so many others have come into it, and now everybody realizes they're comfortable with it. And that's what happened with RE/MAX. Like when at first people were like, that's this goofy colors and the hot air balloon, that's stupid. And then, when Ronnie Matthews and Mike Cedar and Joe Rothschild and those kind of guys came over, all of a sudden, like, wow, brand recognition. Well, not until they got there, right?
Yeah.
Not until big producing people got there. And then everybody else was comfortable saying, oh, okay, well, this is a good place to be. They did it, so it must be okay.
Well, I have to say that, my main reason for coming to EXP when I came and my main reason for staying at EXP are really vastly different. When I was looking for a place to hang my hat, I was like, I love the idea of a virtual brokerage, because being in the office at brokerages I had worked at, to me was very limiting. Oh, you want to do that, you need to do this, you want to do that. And just, I love the idea of having a broker that would be like, go sell stuff, don't break the law, call me if you need me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
and to be honest with you, that's kind of the way it was for 32 years for me. The only difference was, and the reason those guys can't compete with EXP, and it's not really their fault, it's just they got here at a time where, the franchise system was in place, and now it's there, and now you can't undo it, right? You can't go and say, hey, by the way, we're going to go virtual to save all this money. It's like, wait a minute, I own this building, or I have a lease on this space for 3 years, and I have a franchise agreement that lasts 4 more years. So it's done. It's over. They can't compete. And so you're right. EXP does do that, but that's kind of how it was. I get more support at EXP than I ever did at any of the brokerages at RE/MAX.
Well, what's funny is a couple of things. One, I started at RE/MAX, and 2 months in, they lost their franchise. So
you started at the wrong one,
apparently. So I stayed at RE/MAX for a while, and the main reason I went to RE/MAX originally was because everybody told me, don't go to RE/MAX. You need to be an experienced agent. They're not going to support you. If you don't know how to go out and hunt and kill, you'll fail. And I was like, okay, well, I want to be surrounded by hunters and killers, right? I want to be surrounded by the people that don't need the support, that are so good at it. And so that was my methodology going into it, but then as I progressed and then went to another brokerage, which I shouldn't have, but that relationship was vastly different. And I was there, that was purely a money thing. And we've all seen that happen with a bunch of people. Yeah. But the main reason I stay so strongly and such an avid supporter of EXP, quite honestly, is the relationships I have with people like yourself and Andrew and Sarah and Monica. I've got 50 people I can call at any moment and go, hey, I need help with this, or what would you do with this? Yeah. And so the collaboration is so huge. And for that matter, now with 85,000 agents, not only do I have that locally, but if I'm in Sacramento or if I'm in Washington, D.C., it doesn't matter, because they're everywhere now. So yeah, I had all these brokerages where I paid $900 a month at my RE/MAX brokerage, and plus a split, and then at Coldwell, I paid, my splits and my fees and everything else. And here it's like $85. And then other than that, they send me way more money than I send them, aside from, and then I've got such a limited cap, and we're growing our team, which gives us reduced caps. And so it's better for my teammates. It's better for me. And on top of all that is the cherry, which is the collaboration and the friendships and relationships that I've been able to build. Yeah, man.
That's what I can say about the company, is that everybody has their, it's always fun to actually say what's your number one reason, you came, or what's the number one reason you're fixing to come. And, we had one, it was, to be transparent, we thought we could grow our rev share group. And, why would you not want to have potential generational income that comes in every month on the 22nd day of the month? And why would you not want that if it's possible? And especially if you can do it without quitting your day job,
Well, absolutely. The thing is that you're already in your business, if you have a team, or even if you don't. If you're making it in real estate at any decent level, you're already creating and cultivating relationships. This is just one that monetizes it in addition to that.
By the way, I don't know if you saw my post about another massive team that's fixing to announce to come over. And I mentioned that, like a lot of big teams, this team was going to be, was going to attract other agents, because that's just how it's going to work. It's just how it works, how it happens. Like I said, Ronnie Matthews, Mike Cedar, those guys attracted other. That's going to happen, and but they're still going to, outproduce almost everyone else out there. So, and this idea of, trying to figure out, if you're broker from the other side, if you're trying to, poke a hole in the system, was, this company somehow turning revenue share and sharing revenue and sharing success with us was a bad thing, because, we just sell real estate, we sell real estate. And it's like, the two are not mutually exclusive, right?
No, they're not.
Just like, you can walk and chew gum, right? Most people can do that.
Most days.
Having a relationship with another realtor and tell them about something that's better really doesn't suck a lot of time out of your day.
No, it shouldn't.
You can still do what you do. And, like I said, our business has grown drastically during the years that we've been here. So,
well, Jimmy, I know that's not an accident. And I know, between yourself and the rest of y'all's team with Andrew and Sarah and everybody else, that the work ethic over there is phenomenal, and y'all's ability to really tune into people and build those relationships is as well. I have one question before we go, and you mentioned a while ago about Century 21. Did you have one of those gold jackets back in the 80s?
When I got my license in October 22nd, 1982, my dad was pretty disappointed in me up to that point in my life, right? I dropped out of college, just had nowhere jobs, that you get when you're 23 years old and you don't have a degree, nothing where somebody's going to go, man, I want that guy. Mm-hmm. And so when I got my license, I think my dad had this idea that, that it was really hard. It was a hard license to get. And you and I both know it's ridiculously easy. But, I had the license, and he thought, oh, this is, he's not a doctor. He's not an attorney. He's not a CPA, but, this is okay. And he got me one of those jackets for Christmas.
Nice. And
I wore it once on a listing, and I showed up, and, and the guy was coming out of the house, and I had it, I had it on the hanger, and I got it out. I put it on. He goes, please take that off. So I had it. I think I wore it that time and one other time before. And then at the next Halloween party, I wore it.
Nice. Well, Jimmy, it's always great to talk with you. And, I think there's a lot of information in here, especially with these newer agents that need to know, and people that are trying to build teams. What is the easiest way for someone to reach you if they wanted to talk to you about EXP or just what the Franklin team has going
on? My cell is okay to get.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Yeah, 281-433-6728. Just text me and I'll call you back.
Well,
that's one of the things. That's by the way, one of the fundamentals that I don't know how much time you have, but one of the fundamentals that I found that it was like, I really hated to owe somebody a phone call. And so I returned all my calls, and at my peak, when I was still active in the early 2000s, and we had voicemail was the thing. We had voicemail. Mm-hmm. That's how they left a message and got it. So at my peak, I'd have between 170 and 200 voicemails a day. And I either returned or had somebody return those calls for me when I had an assistant or two. And that's one of the things that, like, nobody does now. People, if they don't think there's something in it for them, there's too many people that if you don't think there's something in it for you, they don't do it. Right. And I found that doing that, you can find a relationship there that you didn't know, you weren't even after a relationship. You're just doing it because that's what you do.
Sure.
Hey, I can help you. If I can tell an appraiser, about a property, and ghosting is way too popular these days. I didn't mean to get off on the old man rant.
No, you're good.
But I will say that if you're a new agent, just return your calls, man.
So my OCD kicks in, and my agents all know that if they've got dirty email, and by dirty, I mean like when you open it up and there's 300 unread emails and they leave all their spam and all their trash. Like I hate the apps on my phone that have the little indicators, because if it shows 3 or 2, if it had any notice on there, I have to clear it. I have to go look at it. I have to answer that text. I have to make that phone call. Yeah. My email is empty every day. It's filed, it's cleaned, because, you have to function as a successful person prior to success.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, it's the whole thing. If you're running $100,000 business in a $100,000 manner, you'll never make more than $100,000.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are exceptions to the rules, telephone solicitors, whatever. But
of course,
somebody in our business calls and they want to ask you about, are you getting any activity on your listing? And that's a hard call to make sometimes if you're busy, but just do it. It's the right thing to do. And you'll be amazed how this stuff can come back. And I think you probably saw my second video, which I talked about, doing something that turned in, giving up something that to another realtor that could have gone a different way, that turned into maybe, I don't know, I'm at 27 transactions, and some of those are in the millions on dollar volume. Just because of that. And
that was a good decision.
Yeah, it was a good decision. And, but just do it. And it's amazing how that stuff works.
Awesome. Well, Jimmy, we really appreciate having you here today. Everybody, if you haven't had a chance yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure to leave us a review. And we'll be back next week. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, buddy.